Well, good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a good Saturday. Well, a couple things before we begin today. I guess for those of you who are paying attention, and it may only be a few of you, you noticed that I shaved off my beard. I trimmed the long beard. And I think for a lot of you, probably you think it was a good choice. I will tell you, there's a part of me that always wants to grow one of these crazy long beards. And maybe one day I'll be able to do that. But it always gets to a point where everything becomes about the beard. You know, it becomes like the center of the universe. So, anyway, I thought I would at least acknowledge that. I want to do something a little bit, different. I've done something like this before, but I suppose it's different from a normal devotional. And what I want to do today is I want to talk about different resources that are available to you as you try to build the scaffolding of your spiritual interior. And I mean, all of us have been doing this to some degree, either through practice and modeling. But what I want to do today is actually talk about one particular form of prayer and daily devotion that is connected to our tradition, to the Anglican Episcopal tradition. And that's the tradition of the daily office. Now, for a lot of you, this may be familiar, but I would say for some, not so much. This is rooted, we're a hybrid denomination. So we're part Catholic and we're part Protestant. We're a little bit country and we're a little bit rock and roll. And the daily office sort of has grown out of the monastic part of our Catholic tradition, where there are certain times during the day when a really observant Anglican Episcopalian would stop and do these prayers. And for the Catholic tradition, it could be as many as 7 or 9 times a day that a monk or a religious, someone who's committed to a religious life, stops and prays. When Thomas Cranmer was putting together the first Book of Common Prayer for the Church of England, he decided to narrow that down not to 7 or 9, but to 4. And so there would be a morning prayer service, a noonday prayer service, an evening prayer service, and then a service that's called Compline, or right before you go to bed. And for most Episcopalians who try to be observant of this practice, for most, it ends up being kind of morning prayer. That with the hectic, packed schedule of our life, to do morning, noon, evening, and Compline really requires establishing a rhythm to your life that the modern context excuse. It just really resists. So what I want to do today is I want to talk a little bit about morning prayer. And if you have your prayer book, which I hope you do at your house, if you don't, get on Amazon or come to the Cathedral bookstore as soon as it's open and get yourself a copy. And get your prayer book, pause the video, and turn to page 75. Page 75. So morning prayer, I wish I could tell you that you could open up the prayer book, and even if you were really careful and really focused in, that it could teach you without any help on how to pray the morning office. It's not that simple. But you'll notice on page 75, it has what are called some opening sentences, and it's for each season of the church. And right now, we are in what is sometimes called ordinary time. And so the opening sentences would come on page 78 at any time is when you would pray one of those. So you would say that opening sentence. And then if you felt up to it and needed to, you would do the confession of sin. And then you begin, after the confession of sin, by praying a psalm. And there's a psalm that's established for the day. And you would pray that psalm, and you would start by reading this opening sentence, and then you would pray the psalm, and then you would finish the psalm with that same sentence. So that opening sentence becomes the closing sentence. And then you follow it with either reading Psalm 95 or Psalm 100, depending on the season. And the prayer book kind of gives you directions and guidelines to do that. And then once you've finished that, then you would read a passage of scripture. It's kind of your choice. You would read a passage from the Old Testament, a passage from the epistles, and then you would read a gospel. And the tradition is that in between each of these readings, that you would sing a song. You'd sing a song of praise between each reading. And in our prayer book, these are called canticles. But because we don't have any tunes to these canticles memorized, what it amounts to is you read a canticle. And so if you turn to page 85, you'll see that there's basically one after the other a list of songs or canticles that you pray between the readings that you do. Right? And if you were really a well-educated Episcopalian, you might know some tunes to these canticles that you would sing. But since most don't, we end up reading them. They're like a read song. Right? And just a little bit of prayer book nerd, angle. If you turn to page 144 of the Book of Common Prayer, 144, it shows you which songs you should sing between the readings on a given day. Right. And so then, once you're done doing the readings, then you turn to page 94. No, page 96. And you would say the Apostles' Creed, sort of prayerfully. And then you'll notice on page 97, on the opposite page, is the beginning of the prayers. And the prayers, it's like the collect that we did on the previous Sunday. You would pray that every day. You'd pray the Lord's Prayer. There's what's called a versicle and response that you pray. If you were together with other people, someone would do the versicle and the other people would do the response. But when you're alone, you sort of just read through it by yourself. And then there's a variety of prayers you can pray that day. And then as well as a prayer for mission. Okay. And then there's a place in the prayers where it says any intercessions or thanksgivings. And that's kind of a time in the morning office where you kind of put the brakes on and you think about, whether it's the prayer list from church or people. Maybe you do a stream of consciousness where you are thinking about people that you are making an appeal to God for them, right? And then there's a couple ending prayers. Now, I went through that in part because I wanted to point out to you how ridiculous it is if you were a neophyte, if you had never prayed the morning office, how complicated that could be, right? It's got some twists and some turns. I say all that because I don't want you to get discouraged. If you would have any interest in this at all, right? To do this on as much of a daily basis as you could. Because Forward Movement, which is a resource company for spiritual formation in our denomination, has provided for us this amazing, I would call it tutor, for how to pray the morning office and how to pray the evening office. And it's a podcast. And the podcast, one is called A Prayer in the Morning. A Morning at the Office. It's called A Morning at the Office. And then they've got another one, a podcast, that's called Praying in the Evening. And it's been put together by two priests, Father Wiley Amon and his wife, Mother Laura Amon. And they read through it. And so what I'm suggesting to you, if you have any interest at all in this, is for you to get your prayer book and to bookmark their podcast, and on days when you can, to listen to the podcast and follow along with them in your prayer book. And what it will begin to do is it will begin to create sort of a terrain where you notice, oh, okay, they're starting here, and they're doing this, and they're praying that, and now I go here. And they will be kind of a teacher or a tutor for you on how to pray the morning office. Now, you may be asking, why? Why would I want to do this? The spiritual value or worth of praying the office in our tradition is that every day as you reapproach these psalms, these collects, these prayers, these canticles, these songs, and these same common prayers that you pray, sometimes maybe days in a row, or you recycle and revisit them. That what it begins to do is it begins to create a scaffolding in your mind and in your psyche and your spirit. And it gives you language and ideas that you can sort of hang the circumstances of your life on. It becomes a framework for you to build a relationship with God through the scriptures and through the events of your life. There's days it can be tedious, but you find that if you commit to it, that over a span of time, you begin to build kind of this affectionate, familiar place for these words. And they actually begin to blossom and take root in a very tangible way in your life. When I became an Episcopalian, it was in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and I became the youth and family minister at Emmanuel in Shawnee. And so that was the Episcopal congregation that raised me up as a priest. And they, during this time of COVID-19 and coronavirus, they actually have created a video on teaching people how to do the the morning office. And it's a little bit longer than this one. And so I'm also including, right here, a link to that because you might be interested. They'll go into a little bit more detail. And so that's what this morning devotional is. It's an invitation into the Anglican Episcopal practice of a daily office of prayer. And that's the morning prayer and maybe the evening prayer. And I know it's not going to catch everyone's imagination, but I wanted to let you know that it's out there. And to whatever degree you have the time and the space to walk into that world, I believe, as many do, that in the long run, there's a payoff that you will truly find comforting and challenging to develop and grow your relationship with Jesus and with God. And so that's my invitation to you this morning. Let's pray together. Our God and our Creator, there are so many different ways that we know you and we meet you and that we grow in relationship with you. And in our own tradition, there are some very specific ways that you have cultivated over the years that allows us to do that. And so, God, to whatever degree you want to meet some in our congregation in that place, to learn how to meet you in the Psalms and in the prayers and in the scriptures, God, may your Spirit move in our lives to do that work. And then for those who don't connect, God, continue to find a way to take up residence in their lives, to walk with them, to love them, to comfort and challenge them. God, that's our prayer this morning. And I pray all of this in your holy name. Amen. Nathan and I have a song for you at the end. This is a song, it's called Wouldn't That Be Fine? And this was my attempt to get at the heart of one of the central aspects of our faith, and that's the reality of God's grace. When we fail to live up to what we know is the good and right life, that God comes and gives us his love and his mercy. And so enjoy. Wouldn't that be fun? night they dreamed of heaven. This religion of such kindness. And I know why Jesus is hung around for such an unreasonable amount of time. Chase them all throughout your date book. Those deadlines you must keep. Refuse to lower your expectations, then find unhealthy ways to sleep. Wouldn't it be fine if we could let it go? Be nice if you didn't have to show as though this time does not matter, as though this moment you get a free ride. Questions can stay unanswered. All of your debt just stays unreconciled. Yeah, wouldn't that be
as though this time
wouldn't that
does
be
not
fine?
matter?
Always wanted to find perfection. This trait I finally chose. The terrain is always shifting. I can feel it cracking beneath my toes. 'Cause life can weigh just a little heavy, keeping up with these floating trends. Exactly just what kind of fiction do you cope with in your head? Wouldn't it be fine if we could let it go? Wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to show as though this time does not matter, as though this moment you get a free ride, as though all your questions can stay unanswered. All of your debt can just stay unreconciled. Yeah, wouldn't that be
As though this